Escape the Pizzaplex is pretty good, but admittedly there's not as much to talk about in it like there was the week before. And I think part of it is that in the early FNAF era we didn't really get a lot of details, so a book all about the location and the ins and outs of it is huge. Whereas for something like Security Breach, we've already seen most of this Pizzaplex, so details about the Pizzaplex are less meaningful. I thought I already talked about all of the main points that I could for this book, until I got an email for the podcast that has to do with something related to the book. Do you guys remember that in Ruin we see several missing posters for Gregory? Why is that? Slices, put on your aprons and let's bake ourselves a theory. So like I said, I got an emailed question for the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, the weekly podcast I have on this channel. It was from Holden, who wrote, "Something I've wondered about, especially with Escape the Pizzaplex, are the missing posters with Gregory's face at Roxy Raceway in Ruin. I assumed that they were put up by his family if he, as GGY, was living in the little hidey holes around the Pizzaplex. The main problem though is that it seems that Cassie was in contact with Gregory as he was under the control of Dr. Rabbit, which would be weird for Cassie to be crying at Gregory going missing if she actively saw him at the Pizzaplex at the same time." He goes on to describe the other weird things about it, but that's the gist of the email. And it's a good question. If these missing posters are before Security Breach, that's the same time that Cassie was actively seeing him every day. So why would she be upset at him being missing if he's not? Because again, in Ruin, the full scene here is a wall of missing posters and Cassie crying at them. But is that really what's going on here? It's all pretty confusing. But there are several possibilities to explain what these missing posters might mean. One of them is exactly what Holden brought up in his email. While Gregory is Dr. Rabbit, for everyone else in the world, technically he is missing. In case you haven't been keeping up with the FNAF lore, Dr. Rabbit / GGY is the idea that Gregory was under the control of Glitchtrap before the events of Security Breach, like Vanny is for Vanessa. We see this in the story GGY, and we see further evidence of this in Escape the Pizzaplex, where throughout the book he's trying to kill Cassie, which doesn't seem like something a normal Gregory would do. Like, sure, they are just pranks, but these pranks can actively kill Cassie, which again, normal human boy probably would not do. And all the while this is happening, it's assumed that he's spending his time and or sleeping and living full time at the Pizzaplex. After all, there's several nooks hidden away that he or Vandy could sleep in, and we know he's at least spending all night at the Pizzaplex as we see throughout Escape the Pizzaplex. How many times am I going to say Pizzaplex? Because it's already stopping sounding like a word. Maybe I'll put a counter up. I'm gonna put a counter. Just a number. Not gonna, it'll just be the number right there. We'll just keep track. So if he is spending all of his time at the Pizzaplex, after a while his parents surely would have filed a missing persons report, and then these missing posters would have been created. But there is an issue with this, and Holden points it out in his email. If during this time Gregory was reported missing and these posters were created, then surely Cassie would have noticed, right? Like if these posters are around the Pizzaplex and it's a picture of the kid you hang out with every night, you're probably gonna bring it up to him. So right away, there are major issues with missing posters existing at all, but that's only during Escape the Pizzaplex, which takes place before Security Breach. So what if these posters were created after Security Breach? Some people have raised the argument that Gregory never escaped the Pizzaplex in Security Breach, that the bad ending is the canon one, where Gregory gets free and tries to take a rest outside in the alley somewhere, and Vanny catches up before too long and drags him right back in. And if that's true, then the missing posters could show up after those events. And on the surface, with just the games for context, this does make sense. If Gregory was just there as a normal patron but then got stuck there overnight and eventually kidnapped, he would have gone missing. But taking into account everything we've discussed so far, he was likely already at the Pizzaplex for a very long time working under Glitchtrap. So the idea of staying at the Pizzaplex doesn't really change anything with that previous issue. If he was already there for an extended period of time and no one was keeping up on him, staying longer wouldn't then suddenly trigger a missing persons. It would have already triggered if somebody was there to trigger it. And that's only if the bad ending is the canon one. Every other ending sees Gregory escaping the Pizzaplex perfectly fine, which again, if he's got parents to go back to, then he would probably go back to them and a missing persons report would never be filed. Which then leaves us with another possibility. Are these posters even real at all? The problem with using anything as evidence in Help Wanted, Security Breach, Help Wanted 2, or Ruin is that everything we see in this games is up to suspect, because everything we've seen in these games could be augmented. Help Wanted is literally an in-universe video game, so everything in it has been created. What we see in Ruin and Help Wanted 2 are seen through the eyes of people who use a Vanny AR mask. And not only does the AR mask distort reality, obviously, but as we see in the beginning of Ruin, when you put on the Vanny mask, you receive an occipital transponder, which Helpy can use to augment your vision. So once you put on that mask once, we can't technically fully trust everything that character sees. And the same thing goes for Security Breach. If Gregory really was working as Dr. Rabbit for Vanny and Glitchtrap, it's incredibly likely that he also at some point wore the Vanny mask. After all, Vanessa created it after already being controlled by Glitchtrap in Help Wanted, so that was probably created to turn Gregory, and if he put on the mask, he would have received that same occipital transponder, which is possibly why he's able to see Vanny, but Freddy can't. All this to say, the things we see in these games can't necessarily be trusted on the surface, but especially these missing posters, because occipital transponder or not, the missing posters are only seen in the AR world. So these posters might not be real, especially when we consider the full context of the cardboard cutout of Cassie crying. That's one of 3 cardboard cutouts in this area. One of them is her putting on makeup, this one is her crying the makeup away, the third one is Gregory comforting her. A lot of us interpret these cardboard cutouts as memories of her worst birthday party ever, where she met Gregory and met Roxy. None of her friends showed up, but they eventually did. This birthday is corroborated in not only Ruin, but Escape the Pizzaplex as something that definitely happened, which means that this image of Cassie crying isn't necessarily related to these missing posters at all. She's crying because of her birthday party, but they're placed near the missing posters. That is still a meaningful placement, but they aren't directly connected. But when it comes back to what these missing posters are meant to represent, real or not, that goes back to what Gregory was doing before Security Breach. Like I explained for the first option, Gregory was likely serving under Glitchtrap before Security Breach, and I believe the evidence we have in front of us suggests that he was the one luring victims into a trap that Vanny would then kill them or do whatever they're doing to the victims. But here's where a huge wrench gets thrown in. Not only did Cassie see Gregory at least every night during this time period, but Gregory wasn't staying at the Pizzaplex 24/7. In GGY, when he's still definitely under the control of Glitchtrap, he's going to school. He's making friends, and he's using the school as a place to find victims. The main character of GGY, the guidance counselors at that school, he's actively picking people out and bringing them to the Pizzaplex. So even if there is a time period where Gregory is working for Glitchtrap but not hanging out with Cassie, there couldn't really be missing posters for him then because he was still going to school every day. Unless, like Vanessa, he changed locations. Because when Vanessa was initially taken over by Glitchtrap, she was working for a video game company. And then when Glitchtrap took over her mind, that's when she was transferred to the Pizzaplex. So is it possible that in the original location, she turned Gregory and they both went to the new location for the Pizzaplex together? Technically that's possible, but it seems much more likely that Gregory was found and targeted at the Pizzaplex, which would have mean he already lived nearby. So there really isn't a solution before Security Breach that makes sense for these missing posters. So ultimately, I think there's only really 2 options that are feasible here. The first one is that these posters are real. And if they are, I think the only person who could have filled a missing persons report to get them created is Cassie. As far as Cassie knows, Gregory lives full-time at the Pizzaplex. Even if he's going to school, every night he spends at the Pizzaplex. But after the events of Security Breach, the Pizzaplex collapses. It's destroyed. So if Gregory was living there and Cassie goes to find him and can't because it's destroyed, she might assume that he's gone missing. So not being able to get into contact with Gregory at all, and the only place she knew he hung out is gone, she might have filed the missing persons report. But the problem is, we really have no evidence of any of that being true. It's speculation on speculation. We have no evidence that after the collapse, Cassie wasn't able to contact Gregory, and frankly, we don't have evidence on when the Pizzaplex collapsed at all. We just know it happens before Ruin. So I'm fairly confident that instead, the second option is the most likely one, and that's that I don't think these missing posters are real at all. We're fairly certain that these cardboard cutouts are of a sequence of Cassie's worst birthday party ever, the birthday party that's corroborated in the games and the books. So if that's true, these are Cassie's memories being manifested in the AR world through the Vanny mask. And if anything, that's strong evidence that this mask has already creeped its way inside of Cassie's consciousness, at least enough to access strong memories. So if that cardboard cutout is a memory of her birthday, then it's not because of the missing posters that are next to it. But if it's being manifested, and being manifested next to missing posters, then this whole scene is set up specifically to manipulate Cassie. Throughout this game, Cassie is constantly doubting her own abilities to save Gregory. When she first hears that he's under Roxy Raceway, she complains that that's on the other side of the Pizzaplex and she doesn't think she can make it that far. But anytime things get really bad, Gregory, or as we learn, the Mimic through the walkie-talkie, encourages her to keep looking for Gregory. This is manipulation, something that Glitchtrap seems to be very well suited to do to humans. And the Vanny AR mask that Cassie is using is also similarly infected by Glitchtrap. We see this as the manifestation of Helpy. So everything we see through this mask can and seems to be tainted by Glitchtrap. So the memories we see displayed in the Roxy Salon, I believe, are purposely placed there by Glitchtrap. He wants Cassie to get rid of the Mexis console in the basement and release the Mimic so he can be free, and he needs to make sure that she follows through with this. So not only is Glitchtrap leading Cassie down this wild goose chase, but he's reinforcing her own drive to do so. He's taking her memories and manipulating them together to create scenes to guilt Cassie to keep going forward. He took a memory of her crying and feeling despair and placed it in front of missing posters of Gregory. Frankly, cliche and unrealistic missing posters. Something that looks like if you told me, draw a missing poster, I'd draw that. This isn't a real thing. These missing posters have never existed. But Glitchtrap is trying to manipulate Cassie by showing her through her own memories in this AR world, if you fail, you'll be left alone and crying over the disappearance of Gregory, that same friend who was there for you when you needed him most. Because I never think these missing posters existed in the first place. Probably, anyway. Frankly, this is a very small detail in Ruin, but it's something that's worth bringing up. And I think it better helps establish Gregory's character, Cassie's character, and Glitchtrap's manipulation tactics. But to be honest, Secret of the Mimic better come soon, because we're getting down to the wire on things we can talk about. It's getting very dire. But in the meantime, yesterday the Mario Kart Direct came out, and I not only reacted to the whole thing live, but I edited down that live stream and posted it on the second channel right here. If you want your fan art featured on the channel, make sure to share with #ToastArt. A huge shout out to the best channel members, the Dough Risers, and until next time, as always, stay toasty slices.